Twin brothers sentenced for the same crime, but two very different outcomes.
Yeah, 3 on your side first told you last Wednesday about the governor issuing executive clemency for the first time.
Now that freed man's brother remains behind bars, serving what advocates call an unlawful sentence.
Maurice Taylor and his twin brother Marcus both pled guilty to business burglary back in 2015. Court records show each man was sentenced to 20 years with 15 years to serve. But under Mississippi law, business burglary carries a maximum sentence of 7 years. Marcus Taylor received executive clemency. He is now free. Maurice Taylor, however, remains behind bars. The Mississippi Impact Coalition says his conviction deserves the same consideration.
Why is it okay for one, but Maurice is still incarcerated? So it's urgent to realize that these sentences are unlawful.
Now, the coalition argues the sentence exceeds the statutory maximum and should be corrected. 3 on your side also spoke with a local attorney who says if the indictments are accurate, Maurice Taylor should be released. The group has sent documentation to the Attorney General's office, the Court of Appeals, and the Solicitor General. They are now waiting for